This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio in 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80. Obviously, this is Friday. This weekend, Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The Cleveland Cavaliers visit the Boston Celtics in Boston, Massachusetts, inside TD Bank Garden. Monday night, a series we've been waiting all season for, all year for. The number one seed in the entire NBA, led by the presumed MVP, league MVP, the one and only James Harden, who averaged 30 this year. Along with CP3, fresh off a 41-point explosion against the Utah Jazz in Game 5 of the Western Conference semifinals. The Houston Rockets host the reigning, defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors in a series that should be nothing short of epic if indeed these individuals, these teams are what we think they are. All of that and more are the kind of stories that we'll get into today. Having said all of that, let me tell you this. Right now, for the moment, that ain't the story that's on my mind. It's a couple of stories that's on my mind. A couple of stories that need to be broached. First things first, Dwane Casey, head coach for the Toronto Raptors, voted Coach of the Year by the Coaches Association after a 59-win season in the Eastern Conference, number one seed. Dwane Casey is out as head coach of the Toronto Raptors. And personally, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's BS. It's BS. Now, there's a lot of you out there that's going to refute what I'm saying. If I give a damn, I'll be sure to let you know. But I don't. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not about the record. It's not about the fact that he won 57% of his games. It's not even about the fact that they ended up losing in the postseason. Had he lost to anybody other than LeBron James, you'd hear nothing from me. You'd hear nothing from me. But when you run into somebody universally recognized as the greatest in the world, who's 6'9", 260 pounds, literally capable, as we have witnessed, of stripping the heart out of individuals' chest, figuratively speaking, like DeMar DeRozan, who's an all-star, a starter in the all-star game, who averaged 23 points a game and looked like a lost puppy against LeBron James. A Kyle Lowry, a miniature Kyle Lowry, got a lot of heart, pit bull, can play, an all-star himself, but wilts beneath the presence of LeBron James, as most teams have. What are you supposed to do? Now, if Dwane Casey had lost to John Wall and Bradley Beal in the first round, I get it. If Dwane Casey had lost to the Milwaukee Bucks, even with the Greek freak and Middleton himself, I would get it. If Dwane Casey had lost to the Indiana Pacers, I'd get it. If any of those things had happened, if he had lost to the Boston Celtics, I'd get it. If he lost to the Philadelphia 76ers, I'd get it. But LeBron James, that's why you lose your job? Because you can't defeat LeBron James? And everybody wants to point to, oh, you know what, not everybody, but some people want to point to, oh, man, coach's decision could have been here or there. Oh, stop it. Just stop it. Did you not see LeBron James? LeBron James had his worst game of the playoffs in his eyes and put in a triple-double in Game 1. Game 2, he annihilated them. Game 3, he won on a game-winning floater or bank shot from the left-hand side. That was the game DeMar DeRozan got benched. What are you telling me now, Masai Ujiri, the general manager for the Toronto Raptors? What are you telling me? Whatever the hell you owners are, whoever the hell you are you telling me that Dwane Casey was fired because he benched DeMar DeRozan? Like DeMar DeRozan that game that he shot 3 for 14, couldn't buy a basket? Couldn't defend, couldn't do anything because he just seemed lost? You gonna tell me that DeMar DeRozan would have made a difference that game? And Anunoby? In the way that he played, in the way that he defended? What was he supposed to do? What was he supposed to do? Now, if you want to make the argument that they quit in Game 4 because they got ramrodded and bum rushed, they was down by as many as, what was it, 38. Okay. That's quitting. And if you want to point to the fact that it ended that way, okay, I won't even argue with that. Just don't tell me that the man is fired because he couldn't advance in the playoffs when you know good and damn well he ran into LeBron. And Masai didn't build a team equipped to deal with LeBron. You don't beat LeBron James by trying to attack inside with Valanciunas and Serge Ibaka, or trying to, or having a primary weapon being a guy that plays his position or essentially tries to play like him. DeMar DeRozan shot 27% from three-point range this season. He's not a three-point shooter. He scores by taking it to the hole because he's athletic, he's gifted, and he's usually bigger than most of the guys he's going up against. That's not the case when you're going against LeBron James. Who's going to be bigger than LeBron James, ladies and gentlemen? Kevin Durant's taller, but who's going to be bigger? You don't beat LeBron James by being a guy whose offensive success on the basketball court is predicated on his ability to finish at the basket. That's not how you beat LeBron James. You got to beat LeBron James the way Steph Curry beats LeBron James, the way Kevin Durant beats LeBron James. That's by shooting long range. Haven't you figured that out? Why do we look at Houston and the Golden State Warriors and think they have a chance? Because James Harden and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson bombs away. LeBron can't do anything with that. What you going to do with somebody that pulls up from 30? What are you going to do? You're up 11 in game 3 of the NBA Finals and you look like you got Golden State finished. And what happens? Kevin Durant and those boys came back dropping long-range bombs from all over the place. One of those threes, Kevin Durant pulled up right in front of LeBron's face. When you're 6'11 with a 7'6 wingspan, with sniper-like abilities, you can do that. When you're 6'6 and you don't have a three-point shot, you can't. What is Dwane Casey supposed to do with that? What's he supposed to do? Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Lowry's up to my chin. I'm 6'1". He's a pit bull. I could never be the player that he was. And he's very talented and he's an all-star, but he's miniature. What are you going to do with that against LeBron? I mean, come on. And as much as I love me some David Fizdale, I would have loved for Dwane Casey to be available when the Knicks were looking for a coach. Would have been nice. Would have been a nice option for the Knicks to have. Because Dwane Casey ain't going to be without a job long. Not if basketball minds are as smart as they think they want everybody to think they are. Dwane Casey could coach, man. He just didn't have the personnel to beat LeBron. It's that simple. And I don't understand for the life of me why this man was without a job right now. I mean, I do understand. Let me take that back. Because he's not without fault. He's not completely flawless, and I get all of that. But damn, look at the roster. Look at the roster, ladies and gentlemen. It speaks for itself. 888, say ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The other person on my mind is Brett Brown, head coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I went on a record yesterday, and I said this man should not be fired. I know I got on him for blowing the first 3 games, and damn it, I meant it. I ain't taking back anything I said. But I also said 3 games should not define this man's career. It's the first season he's had anything to work with, and he won 52 games and did a good job. Number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. I respect the hell out of Brett Brown. And I want everybody to know that. And I think that he should return as head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm not of the mindset that he should be fired. But he didn't do a good job the first 3 games against Boston. They weren't prepared to play in game 1. They threw a 22-point lead. They blew a 22-point lead in game 2. And game 3, with those comedy of errors by those youngsters, that was coaching too. Why is Ben Simmons doing the inbounds when he's the only athlete who can get away from guys looking for the ball to get open and get the ball? Why? Why is J.J. Redick making a pass? I know the play worked during the regular season, but damn it, you don't think Brad Stevens knew that and prepped for it for the playoffs? I mean, come on. Who can't figure that out? So I say all of that to say this. I'm not advocating Brett Brown loses his job. What I said was it wouldn't be surprised if it ended up happening anyway, because if you're Brian Colangelo and you swapped the third overall pick in the draft for the first overall pick in the draft and gave up an additional first round pick just to get your hands on Markelle Fultz instead of Jason Tatum, when you see Jason Tatum balling for the Boston Celtics, if you're Brian Colangelo, you trying to tell me you don't want to see the number one overall pick in the draft that you picked playing? I mean, Brett Brown couldn't find any minutes. I understand that TJ McConnell is a gritty kid, a lot of heart and moxie, good perimeter shot. I'm not knocking TJ McConnell at all. But you're trying to tell me you could find minutes for TJ McConnell, but at no time you could find minutes for Markelle Fultz? You going to really say that with a straight face? Markelle Fultz may not understand the game of basketball as much as Brett Brown would like. Markelle Fultz might need to learn the playbook a bit better. I understand that. But with all the times that the Philadelphia 76ers were bleeding during these playoffs, at no time could you find yourself inserting him into the lineup to see what he could give you offensively for a few minutes? I mean, please. Come on. Clearly, Brett Brown has an affection for TJ McConnell. Probably wants to help him get a new contract. And by the way, I'm a radio host. I don't coach for the 76ers. I agree with Brett Brown. I want TJ McConnell to get another contract too. But not at the expense of Markelle Fultz riding the bench. And I'm not saying Markelle Fultz should have been your point guard. What I'm saying is you could have put him in there for offense. That's all I'm saying. You could have found a few minutes just to see what he's got. He's the number one overall pick in the draft. What kind of message does that send to the rest of your team? If you can't find it within yourself to let the number one overall pick in the draft get some shine, particularly when Jason Tatum, the number 3 overall pick, is balling. It's embarrassing. And Brett Brown did not take that into consideration. So for that reason and that reason alone, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Brett Brown ended up losing his job. I'm not asking for it. I'm not advocating it. I'm not even supporting it. I'm saying keep your eyes on Brian Colangelo and Scott O'Neal and the brass that exists within the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm telling you right now, they looked at Brett Brown coaching in this series. They weren't that impressed. I haven't spoken to anybody about this. They didn't tell me anything like that. But I'm telling you what I know, because damn it, I know basketball. And I know what I'm seeing. And people like those individuals that I mentioned, along with various others within the 76ers hierarchy, are individuals I've known surpassing 15 to 20 years. I know what I'm looking at. And when I tell you they weren't happy, damn it, I'm telling you. Don't question me on this. I know what I saw. I can see body language. Yeah, I'm the guy that covered Allen Iverson for 10 years. I'm the guy that covered Allen Iverson with Larry Brown every day for 6 years. I'm the guy that knew there was controversy when no one else did, just by Allen Iverson walking to the bench or Larry Brown rolling his eyes. I can tell. And I'm telling you, it wasn't good what I saw in terms of body language and beyond when it came to Brett Brown. I bring up Brett Brown at this particular moment in time because Brett Brown is making news right now because according to the Bleacher Report, Mike Chiari, I believe his name. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. I don't want to butcher anybody's name. So, Mike, if I mispronounced your last name, I truly apologize. Chiari. I think it's Chiari or Chiari. Mike Chiari, for Bleacher Report, writes 76ers, Brett Brown. According to Brett Brown, 76ers need high-level free agent to win title. 76ers head coach Brett Brown stressed the importance Friday of landing a big name in free agency this offseason. According to Derek Bodner of The Athletic, Brown said, quote, I think another high-level free agent is required to win a championship. I think we have the ability to attract one. Well, duh. Yes, we know. You got $25 million in cap space. You already got young lions along with a top 5 market in the United States of America to lure a marquee free agent. All true, Brett Brown. And it is absolutely true, Brett Brown, that you absolutely positively need a high-end free agent. Obviously, he was talking about LeBron, even though he never said his name because he doesn't want to pay any fine for tampering charges and what have you. I get that. Or he could have been talking about Paul George too. I get that. And I'm not knocking Brett Brown because nothing was false about what he said. But ladies and gentlemen, my God, work with me for a second. Work with me. You're the Philadelphia 76ers. You had people like myself thinking you were going to the finals because of your ability to defend plus hit perimeter shots like you did against Miami in the first round before you wet the bed against Boston. Okay? How do you look if you just finished getting eliminated in 5 games and before you had a chance to pass, gas, or take a breath mint, you sitting there talking about how we could use another high-level free agent? How you sound? 76ers just got eliminated Wednesday night. It's Friday afternoon. 36 hours later, you talk about what you need instead of what you didn't do. How you think that make you look? Is it just me? Is it just me? I'm not saying that Brett Brown said anything false, but do I want to hear that from Brett Brown today? When clearly you could have done a better job in this series as a coach? No, I don't want to hear that. And I want to emphasize that Brian Colangelo and Scott O'Neal and Mr. Rubin and Josh Harris and others are listening. Don't fire Brett Brown. I'm not advocating that. As great as I think Jay Wright would be as a head coach at Villanova, or some of these other guys like the Mark Jacksons of the world, or the Dwane Caseys of the world, and others, I am not advocating that Brett Brown be dismissed because guess what? This is his first season, and he won 52 games. As far as I'm concerned, this is his first real season to coach a basketball team, and he won 52 games. I give him a lot of credit. I am not advocating that he be dismissed, although I think Dwane Casey is attractive. Mark Jackson is attractive. Jay Wright is attractive. Brett Brown, based on the fact that he has been subjected to what he has been subjected to because of the process. We gotta trust the process. That bogus nonsense. Real process is taking place in Boston. Real process is taking place because not only do they got young players like Jason Tatum, 19, Jaylen Brown, 21, Marcus Smart, 23, Kyrie Irving, 25. But you use the draft, you use trades, and you use free agency with Gordon Hayward, who's 27. That's a real process, not tanking seasons while stealing money from the public, which is what the 76ers did for 3 years and would have done it longer if the commissioner hadn't stepped in and compelled Josh Harris to bring the great Jerry Colangelo on board, who ultimately brought his son on board. That's exactly what would have happened. They'd have kept losing for a couple of more seasons with their disgraceful selves, their un-American selves, weren't even willing to compete in a capitalistic society. You sitting there throwing seasons on purpose while stealing people's money. Shame on you. Shame. The process, you gotta trust the process. What you saying now, Philadelphia? For the first time in my life, I am going to publicly, because of the process, I'm going to call Philadelphia Filthadelphia. Because that's a filthy, stinking attitude to have, where you think it's okay to throw seasons. Shame on you. Shame. Having said that, I'll say it again. I'm not saying that Brett Brown should lose his job. I'm saying if you're Brett Brown, maybe, just maybe, we don't want to hear something about how you need some marquee free agent to get over the hump just 36 hours after coaching, along with other things, had everything to do with the fact that you went home in 5 games to the great Brad Stevens and his Boston Celtics squad. I'm just saying, it's just a thought. It's just a thought.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him, "Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash." His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. A little later on in the show, I'm going to get into Matt Patricia, the new head coach for the Detroit Lions. I'll elaborate further on that particular subject other than to say anybody that is guilty of sexual harassment, sexual assault, domestic violence, or anything else, as far as I'm concerned, should be treated like the criminals they are and thrown in jail. With that being said, however, there's no guilt attached to Matt Patricia. It's an allegation. It's 22 years ago. And we'll get into it further, but federal law essentially prohibits you even asking, an employer potentially asking a prospective employee about such matters if they were never found guilty of such a thing. But the state of Michigan purportedly allows that question to be asked. That's what I was informed about from a legal perspective. How accurate that is, I have not looked that up, but that's what I was told by legal minds. Nevertheless, it's an allegation. And district attorney at the time from 22 years ago alluded to it being unfortunate circumstances because even though Matt Patricia was indicted, never went to trial, he was never found guilty of anything because the alleged victim refused to testify, and he said that was typical, which to a large degree is true. The flip side to it is that there are occasions where folks lie, where they don't tell the truth, and where a sheer accusation is enough to potentially ruin somebody's career, if not their life. So it's an incredibly touchy situation. It's a subject that doesn't appear to be going anywhere for the foreseeable future as it pertains to Matt Patricia, and we don't know what the fallout may be. Time will tell. So it's a real dicey situation to even discuss. But nevertheless, because it's in the news, I have an obligation to address it, which I just did. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. NBA Final Four, Houston, Golden State, Cleveland, Boston. That's something to talk about along with Dwane Casey's firing. And you heard Brett Brown articulating his thoughts about what the Philadelphia 76ers desperately need in order to win a championship just 36 hours after he got bounced out in 5 games by Boston. 888-SAY-ESPN. That is the number to call. Let's go to Anthony in the Bronx. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Anthony. What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on, Stephen, man? Long-time fan, first-time caller, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
My question is, not my question, but just sort of, I understand Dwane Casey's a phenomenal coach. You know, I mean, doesn't deserve to get fired, but I understand it, being that, he's gotten swept 2 years in a row. Granted, it's by the greatest player in the world.
By
right
LeBron,
now.
yes.
Right. Granted, but you got swept. I mean, in the fashion that you lost, come on, that's crazy. Then he has a strained relationship with his star player, you know, and that's already a 50-something win team that if you just maybe
Hold on. Pause, Anthony for a second. What strained relationship with his star player?
With DeRozan. I mean, his relationship with DeRozan isn't that.
I need evidence. Other than the benching in Game 3, what?
Well, I mean,
Anthony, what I'm trying to say to you is we've never heard anything negative about their relationship until the Game 3 benching. And even then, DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry came out and supported Dwane Casey staying on as head coach. So there's never been any friction. It's just that he made a coach's decision to bench a star that was clearly overwhelmed by the greatness of LeBron James.
Well, but if DeMar DeRozan is your star player, and like every star player of every organization, that usually they come to that person to get some feedback. Like, what do you think?
But wait a minute. But wait a minute, Anthony. What I'm challenging you on is if you sat up there and said Dwane Casey had to go because he benched DeMar DeRozan, that's fine. But you gave the implication that there's friction between the two, and I'm telling you there is none. Dwane Casey made a coach's decision. DeMar DeRozan didn't even get in an uproar over the decision. So what I'm saying to you is that a coach made a decision, game 3. Other than that, there is no evidence before or after pointing to DeMar DeRozan having so much of a disagreement with Dwane Casey. What are you talking about?
But regardless of that, what it is you say the Raptors should do then? I mean, they're obviously not.
I think they need to reformulate their roster. I don't think DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry are a two-headed monster that can take the East for you as long as LeBron James is in the conference. Period.
I don't know. I mean, you're not going to get rid of DeMar DeRozan or Kyle Lowry.
Well, hold on, wait. Well, it depends on what you can get for them. That's not true. It depends on what you can get for them. I've been on the record. You're listening to somebody that looked C.J. McCollum in the face 2 days ago on First Take. My television show on ESPN every weekday from 10 a.m. to noon, East Coast time. I looked C.J. McCollum in the face, and then I text back and forth with Damian Lillard. One of them need to go. Because you can't get better if you're Portland by keeping them, because those are the real only two guys with value. That's my position.
I see. I get that. All right.
So sometimes it's not about the player. See, you're looking at the player. Oh, you're not going to get rid of DeRozan. Yes, you can. It's not that he's bad and he can't play. It's that he has value. And if what you have around him doesn't work, sometimes it requires getting rid of those parts. Sometimes it requires getting rid of him. In the nation's capital, we're talking about Bradley Beal. We're talking about John Wall and how they may not coexist. They can play. I'd want them both if I had the requisite parts around them. But if I don't have that, then one of them needs to go so I can get the necessary parts and tell the other that I kept to elevate their level of play.
All right, I can see that. All right.
That's all. Take it easy, man. Have a good day.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
I knew that I would hear from my boy, the ultimate LeBron hater, but he knows his basketball. He's my little brother, his crazy self. My boy Champ in Detroit. You're live with Stephen A. Take the floor, Champ. It's yours. I hear enough from you off the air. I might as well hear from it now. Go ahead, bro.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not even talking about LeBron.
I know that, but hold on. I know that, but I have to introduce you as the ultimate LeBron hater. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I got to wonder whether or not LeBron wearing the right pair of socks or the right tie when it comes to you. But go ahead.
He's an all-time great, and I'll leave it there. But the interesting piece today is what happened with Toronto Raptors and Dwane Casey. And I thought, I did an article in the Shadow League with J.R. Gamble a few days ago, and I thought he should have been fired. And obviously Toronto thought the same. He was the number 1 seed with the best record in the Eastern Conference. And I think if you look back over the last 30 years, a 4 versus 1 in the East has happened as far as the 4 winning 3 times, Atlanta losing in 94, LeBron losing to Boston in 2010. But I think this is the first time in NBA history that a 1 seed has been swept out the playoffs before the conference finals or the NBA finals. And when you look at this series, when I was watching it, game 1, Toronto just let it slip away. If you can look at the crowd and Casey, he couldn't gather the troops, and he lost them. And everybody been talking about Jerry Stackhouse being interviewed with the Knicks and maybe the Pistons and so forth, and I think he's the front runner for this position. Where was Stackhouse on the bench throughout the playoffs, the guy who led your G League team to a championship and to a runner-up title this year? And he was responsible for these young guys developing. So I know a lot of people talking about this Coach of the Year award, but what happened to Scott Brooks, Rick Carlisle in Detroit, Tom Thibodeau, and a host of other coaches that's won this award? This award does not mean you're the best coach in basketball. It means the media felt you did an outstanding job that particular year.
But nobody called Dwane Casey the best coach in basketball. What they said is he's an outstanding coach. And here's where I would get on you. When I think about if you lost, and this is the point that I was making, if you're Dwane Casey and you lose to anybody else, I understand. But when one individual is your kryptonite, because no matter what or who you throw at him, he just strips their heart right out of their chest on this particular team. To me, that's an indictment against the players. I look at Indiana. Indiana's not a better team than Toronto, but they weren't scared. And they went after LeBron, and they went after the rest of the crew. Toronto didn't do that in 2 of the 4 games. So, I mean, to me, when I'm looking at it from that perspective, that's when I don't believe it's coaching. That's when I believe it's a lot on the players. In certain other situations, I would say coaching, but I don't think in this particular case that's applicable.
But this is where you double down on it. Oladipo was a role player last year. Indiana couldn't win a game last year.
On OKC behind Russell Westbrook.
Hear me out. Hear me out with this. That was your opportunity. If I'm the general manager, I'm looking at Indiana, who have a low basketball IQ collectively as a basketball team. I have 2 All-Stars, Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. I'm getting swept with home court advantage. That means this guy has lost my basketball team. I have to make some changes. I got a young coach in Jerry Stackhouse that everybody looks that they want him. I can't just let him walk out the door. I have to get this guy an opportunity.
Whoa, stop right there. Stop right there, because now I understand where you're going with this. See, it's one thing to say that Dwane Casey deserved to lose his job. What you seem to be saying is that Jerry Stackhouse should get a shot in Toronto since he's been producer for their G League. That's a different argument.
I want to lead this before we go. I know I got to be quick. I want to say this to you. He said DeRozan. Let's go back in 2001 season. Bill Belichick won the championship, the AFC championship game over the Pittsburgh Steelers with Bledsoe when Brady got hurt in the championship game. He came back and doubled down and said, I'm rolling with the young boy. Do you really believe they would call Bill Belichick the genius when they set the highest paid quarterback and Drew Bledsoe down, had the St. Louis Rams won the Super Bowl? My point of saying is, when you do things like sitting DeMar DeRozan for 14 minutes and you lose, you become the GOAT and not the hero. And that's what happened in Toronto.
Listen, that's a valid point, but in the same breath, we've seen this DeMar DeRozan story against LeBron on many occasions. Like I said, your point is incredibly valid, champ, without denial, if you're talking about anybody else. But DeMar DeRozan up against LeBron James, you've seen what LeBron James has done to him time and time again.
Embarrassing.
Thank you. I got to run. Appreciate the call, though, bro. Appreciate the support and love. You know that. Thanks so much, my man. Champ, my boy Champ in Detroit, live right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. We'll get back to the Final Four of the NBA playoffs. We're definitely going to get into that. Plus, we got to get a little bit more into this Matt Patricia situation because, again, you got a lot. Listen, everybody out there knows sexual harassment, sexual assault, any kind of domestic violence against a woman is reprehensible. Them punks need to be thrown in prison. But you also have a situation where people believe allegations doesn't mean you're guilty of something. And a lot of men have something to say about that. We'll talk about that and more up next. Hour number 2 with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Before I get back to the calls, let me say this. This Golden State-Houston series, because it is a game, but it means so much to the participants. You want to show the proper level of deference and respect. I'm a huge fan of Steph Curry. Great player, class personified. No bigger critic of Kevin Durant than me for leaving OKC to go to the Golden State Warriors. Never had a problem with him leaving OKC. Had a problem with him going to the Golden State Warriors. But I so appreciate the core decency of this dude. He's a special brother. And as I explained earlier this week, I just love his mama. It's Wanda Pratt, the lovely, wonderful Mama Pratt. He's very, very lucky to have her, obviously, as his mama. James Harden is a really good dude. Mike D'Antoni's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. He really is. As fiery as he gets. Incredibly nice man. And a great coach on the offensive end of the floor who's really come a long way in terms of just managing the or both ends of the floor. Cares more about defense than he ever has. I think he's my coach of the year. Mike D'Antoni, there's a lot to be said for having the best record in the NBA, balling from start to finish, never losing your way, keeping guys focused and on point, ready to handle their business. There's a lot to be said for that. Mike D'Antoni's my coach of the year. James Harden is clearly my league MVP. And CP3 is a Hall of Famer. To be. I love the brother. He's a good man. Pit bull. Wears his emotions on his sleeve. Can be a bit ultra sensitive at times. No doubt about it. But doesn't take away from the unquestionable character he possesses. Not just as a professional athlete and a player and a star, but as a person, as a leader, president of the basketball or NBA Players Association. You know, fond of his parents and his brother, all good people. So everywhere you turn and everywhere you look, you ain't going to find a bigger fan of Draymond Green than me. Or Klay Thompson, who I think is incredibly underappreciated, particularly by the folks right here at ESPN. I mean, the boy's father is a radio host for us, for crying out loud. And we're looking at one of the top 5 shooters in the world. And we barely mention him. Klay Thompson. If I'm Magic Johnson, that's my second target. I don't want outside of LeBron James more than Paul George, more than Jimmy Butler. Well, maybe, pick him between him and Kyrie Irving, who will be a free agent next summer. Klay Thompson, I'm targeting. I want Klay Thompson. Now, I might want Kyrie because he's box office. I don't think I'm getting Kyrie because I think if I'm Danny Ainge in Boston, I ain't letting go of Kyrie Irving. But Kyrie Irving in L.A. instead of Lonzo Ball, please. I do that yesterday, last week, last month, last year. I do that from puberty. Please. Please. Having said all of that, you got to pick a winner and a loser. And I'd love to see CP3 in an NBA Finals. I'd love to see him and James Harden win a championship. I'd much rather be in H-Town than Oakland. I ain't gonna lie to you. That's just my personal social preference. But I don't think it's going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on the record all year long. The Golden State Warriors are too good, too gifted to lose this year, period. Not this series, this year, period. I think they're going to take Houston out in 6 games. I wouldn't mind being wrong at all. Don't bother me. I tell you what should happen. I can't tell you what will happen. It ain't up to me to step out on that court, be in a proper condition, mentally and emotionally focused, to get the job done. That's their job. I'm just telling you what the hell should happen based on the talent that each team possesses, along with coaching. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, without question, the Golden State Warriors are better. I don't give a damn about Clint Capella, CP3, and James Harden's 50-5 record on the court with one another. I could care less. I do care about the way Eric Gordon has shot in these playoffs, particularly the last series. I do care about P.J. Tucker and Trevor Ariza having to be the ones that's going to have to guard Kevin Durant. I worry about that. I worry about Clint Capella having to deal with Draymond Green when Draymond Green has the ability to play point forward, which he usually does, pushing the ball up the floor and making the requisite passes. And God help you if Draymond Green, who will be left open, by the way, starts hitting some threes. God help you. The way I view it, Golden State's going to win one of these 2 games in Houston. They will protect their home court at the Oracle in games 3 and 4. Houston will come back home down 3-1 for game 5. They will win. And then Golden State goes back home at the Oracle in a thriller that they find a way to pull through on. That's how I see the series unfolding. I don't necessarily like it, even though I really am fond of Steve Kerr and I love these players. But I really, really want CP3 to win a championship. I really do. I want James Harden to win a championship. I really, really do. I think it's great for the game of basketball, and I think they really deserve it if they could pull it off. I just don't think they have enough in Houston. Believe it or not, even though James Harden's only shooting 40% last series against Utah, and CP3 had to come to the rescue, averaging 24 and shooting 48% from the field and 44% from three-point range, I still believe in my heart that James Harden is going to be a star this series. I don't like that one-on-one isolation. I don't think that works against Golden State. I think they need to push the ball up the floor and wear Golden State down. I don't think Steph Curry and Klay Thompson want to run like that. I really don't. I think Draymond and Kevin Durant don't mind it, but I think Steph Curry and Klay Thompson have no desire to run up and down the court all night long like that. Here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Running up and down the court, particularly jacking up shots without working the clock, gives Golden State more opportunities to shoot the ball as well, even if they're after made shots by Houston because of the pace of play. And if that happens, right? If that happens, then you're giving essentially Klay Thompson and Steph Curry more reps to get warmed up. And once that happens, good God Almighty, look out. It's something special. It's something special. That's just where I'm at with it. I think no matter what way you go, isolation play, Houston, up-tempo pace, Houston, it still works in Golden State's favor. And by the way, if CP3 is ever to be humbled on the basketball court, it usually occurs against Steph Curry. Because no matter how much of a great defender Chris Paul is, what are you going to do for somebody that can pull up from 40? What are you going to do? What the hell is he supposed to do? That's how good Steph Curry is. Unless you just pray for a miracle that his shot is off, I don't see how you can overcome that. I truly, truly don't. 888 say ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. As it pertains to Boston and Cleveland, it's very, very simple to me. Boston has no answer for LeBron James. I think they have an answer for any other equation, any other situation. They are second in three-point field goal shooting percentage in the NBA. I get all of that. Jason Tatum's been a stud. So is Jaylen Brown. They're relatively young, 21 and 19, or 19 and 21 respectively. Al Horford, great addition, even though his kryptonite has been LeBron James in the playoffs, true, just like DeMar DeRozan. Marcus Morris can play. Terry Rozier ain't scared of a soul. Marcus Smart ain't either. And what a tough defender he is. I would strongly advise LeBron and everybody else to be careful. This brother knows how to draw offensive fouls. He's an elite defensive player. But LeBron is 6'9", 260. And I look at how skinny Jason Tatum is. And I look at how skinny Jaylen Brown is. And I'm not talking about Stephen A. skinny. I'm talking about their NBA skinny. You ever see LeBron? LeBron looks like Goldberg walking into the ring for a WWE match. You ever see how massive this man looks? I got to tell you. I just can't see it. It would be great to see Boston in the NBA Finals. It really, really would. I don't see how they can overcome LeBron James. I'm picking both the East and the Western Conference Finals to end in 6 games. That's how I see it. 888 say ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. I'm talking about that plus Matt Patricia, head coach for the Detroit Lions, recently hired from being the defensive coordinator in New England under Bill Belichick. Apparently there's some issues pertaining to sexual assault charges that he was indicted for back in 1996. 1997, the case was supposed to be heard. 5 months later, the case was dropped because the witness would not testify. I don't like the prosecutor at the time coming out in the Detroit Free Press or the Detroit News just today talking about this is how cases go sometimes. You know, you got a case and you indict somebody, but witnesses don't show up, blah, blah, blah. That's convicting Matt Patricia in the court of public opinion because you couldn't get him in the court of law. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it because I want everybody to hear me very, very clearly. They say 85% of sexual assault cases are men against women. Domestic violence, actually, they say that about. I don't know the numbers for sexual assault or sexual harassment, but I will tell you this. Women are usually the victims. Without question, without doubt. Statistically, that is a fact. Having said that, it is also a fact that occasionally some don't tell the truth. And the fact that we live in a society where the court of public opinion can convict you is unfortunate. And don't give me O.J. Simpson as an example. I don't want to hear that. And here is why, ladies and gentlemen. Even though he was acquitted, his trial was on national TV every day for months. So it is perfectly plausible why someone could jump to a conclusion because they watched the damn trial and they heard the evidence. So they were no different than the jurors. It's just that they didn't have to sit before Lance Ito, the judge. But essentially, the jury consisted of millions upon millions of Americans who watched the trial of the century on television. That is entirely different than people on the outside never hearing nor seeing anything about a particular case. And just because you heard that somebody has been accused of something and these allegations have been levied against them, automatically we jump to the conclusion that they are guilty. You can't do that. And I'm going to go to a place where I've never gone before and saying what I'm about to say. Either you believe in God or you don't. Whoever your God is, either you believe in a higher power or you don't. Because if Matt Patricia is truly guilty, since we'll never find out, because the case has been dropped and it's 22 years old, and we'll probably never find out about it. We're at a point where you just simply have to trust in God that if indeed he is guilty of the allegations that were levied against him back in 1996, 1997, that God will find a way to deal with him. But as it pertains to us, we have to have evidence, and we're devoid of that. And so because of that, we have to ask ourselves, how fair is it from those who would convict this man in the court of public opinion? I don't like it. I'm looking at him with a raised eyebrow. Sexual assault is sexual assault. Period. Him and his boys, one of his boys from college during spring break or something. But that's not proof. And if it's not proof, this man has a right to live his life and not have his quality of life and his family quality of life compromised due to an allegation. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call up. Carlton in Tampa, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Good afternoon, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing today, Stephen A?
I'm all right. Go ahead, man.
All right, I got comments on two things today. First off, both of them relate to Max Kellerman, and today he operated on both sides of the spectrum of sanity today, and usually he's all over on the delusional side, so it was remarkable that he actually visited the sane side for a moment. As far as the delusional side goes, he said today on your program that LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers have had to overcome more this season than the Boston Celtics in getting to this play. Is that not the most hysterical thing you ever heard in your life?
Yes, it is.
The Cleveland Cavaliers, go ahead.
I said it was one of the most delusional things I've ever heard. I ain't gonna lie to you. I felt that way. You know that.
Celtics lose their two best players to injury, and, LeBron forces Kyrie Irving out of Cleveland, then gets his guys in, who he then has to exchange mid to two-thirds of the way through the season for another group of guys, and somehow Max believes that is overcoming more than losing your two best players. And, by the way, playing with two guys that are 20 and 21 and two other guys that are 24 years old, which is the excuse given for the Philadelphia 76ers that Embiid and Simmons weren't seasoned enough or old enough. Well, the Celtics got four guys that are starting that are 24 years or younger. So it's just bonkers how people just twist things to fit their own narrative.
I totally agree with you there, but I will say this. LeBron James wasn't the one that had everything to do with Kyrie departing. He had 2 years left on his contract. Dan Gilbert did not have to trade this man. But when LeBron James refused to commit to 3 to 5 more years in Cleveland, that's when Dan Gilbert said, I'm not going to appease you by doing what you want in terms of keeping Kyrie. If he wants out, I'm going to let him go.
Well, it's Kyrie wanting out that I was referencing.
Yes, got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
As far as the second point goes, Max, for once in his life, for once in the almost 2 years that I've been watching your show, said he took a reasonable position as it pertained to Matt Patricia. And I'm going to tell you why I believe that this story should have never even been written by this Robert. Is it Snell or Shell? I think it's Snell for the deterper. Nowadays, we are seeing almost every instance when something like this gets revealed, long after it happened, that people are using it with an agenda. They want to beat up somebody or discredit somebody or, basically tilt the argument against somebody. And I don't know what this Snell's motivation is, but I would love to find that out. And I'll give you case one is something Max has alluded to for the last year and change on the program about Russian collusion with Donald Trump. And I'm no Trump fan, as you know. I didn't vote for him. But Max hates the guy and has said that over and over on your show. And there is actually zero evidence that anyone in the entire Trump campaign ever had anything to do with Russian collusion. And we're a year and change into the investigation. But his opponents have beat him over the head with it. And just yesterday,
So your point about Max is what? What are you saying about Max exactly in terms of his point
Max
today about Matt Patricia?
Actually said that this shouldn't have even been brought up, that there is no way to draw any real conclusions about Matt Patricia on this.
Hold on, wait a minute. Let me give you the context, Carlton, before I let you respond, because you're a friend of the show and you do a fantastic job when you call in. Let me be fair to you here. And Max, I understand your positions with that, and it's debatable, though. And the reason why it's debatable, because while federal law may prohibit you from even asking a question about somebody's background as it pertains to lawlessness, if it didn't involve a guilty plea or a conviction, the state of Michigan leaves that open. So by virtue of the fact that the state of Michigan allows you to ask those questions, and it's something that could be Googled immediately, then it does make it a news story to bring this up if you are the Detroit News or the Detroit Free Press, because what you're really asking is, why didn't Detroit ask these questions? Why didn't the Detroit Lions know about this before electing to make the decision to hire the man? And I think that makes it legitimate.
First off, I believe federal law dissuades you from asking.
Dissuades is correct.
It doesn't prohibit you. It's Massachusetts law that prohibits you from asking.
Yeah, dissuade is the right word. You're correct. Go ahead.
Because if federal law prohibited it, Michigan wouldn't be allowed to have state law, which contradicts federal law, because I think federal employment law rules and
you're absolutely right.
Issues.
The appropriate word was dissuade, not prohibit. Go ahead.
So that gives Bill Belichick a pass that he wasn't allowed to ask, believe it or not, when he was in Massachusetts, whereas the Lions could have asked. But it's federal law or federal encouragement is right. You shouldn't be able to ask somebody about something that they weren't convicted of. Do you want your career being determined on what somebody might have accused you of in the past?
Well, let me answer that question. I don't want it, And I agree. You're right from a moral perspective, from a principled perspective. You're absolutely right. But we have to take into account today's world where what we're living in, Carlton, as it pertains to the NFL. The NFL, for example, based on what you're saying, you and I will both agree it is absolutely ridiculous that the NFL now says we're going to investigate this matter. Is that not correct? Don't you feel? I feel like really, but the NFL has to do it because of the times that we're living in and how sensitive they are and what it requires and what it entails, all because of the fallout from the whole Ray Rice fiasco. So the fact is that if you would do it with a player, you can't literally turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to once a coach's name comes up into the equation, which makes it understandable why the NFL is not going to investigate this, Carlton. I'll give you the last word really quickly.
Gone overboard, though, Stephen A. I mean, obviously we've gone overboard where people and groups are using this to bludgeon people.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday
but what are you going to do?
Your former co-host, yesterday was talking all about how Peyton Manning shouldn't be able to be in part of the group buying the Carolina Panthers because of that whole University of Tennessee incident years and years ago. I mean, this is out of control in this country. We've gone through a year's investigation of the president, which has produced nothing because people are using this stuff. Anti-racism, anti-Russianism, anti-assaultism.
I agree.
To bludgeon people, bludgeon them with zero evidence.
Carlton,
and there is zero evidence against Matt Patricia.
Carlton, I hear where you're coming from. I don't disagree with you in terms of your principled position, but because of the times we're living in, unfortunately, Matt Patricia may end up being a victim of the times that we're living in, because if it happens to players, eventually it was going to touch coaches. I got to go. I appreciate the call, buddy. Thank you so much for calling.
Next. You're holding up the line, ma'am.
What did you say?
You're next in line for the water slide, ma'am. Feet forward and enjoy the ride.
Okay, dearie. This does look fun. Whee! Oh, you melted me. I've melted.
The Wicked Witch of the West on a water slide? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
See what you've done. Oh!
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Somebody wants to correct us about something we've been saying about the state of Michigan. It's Eric in Michigan. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Eric.
Hey, what's up, Stephen? I've been listening to your show, and you're doing a real good job, but there's a lot of misinformation going around about the state of Michigan.
Go ahead.
The only thing the Detroit Lions could have asked Matt Patricia was if he was convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony.
The only thing hold on. The only thing they could not ask him of.
No, they could ask him if he's been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor, and that's it.
Well,
they cannot ask him if he's been indicted. They cannot ask him if he's got charges pending.
Hold on, but where's whoa. But where's the information coming from? I don't recall anybody saying that they could.
Oh, there are a lot of people that are asking how can the Detroit Lions not know this? And the only reason they could not know this is because they can't ask him.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to leak this story. The Detroit Lions can't go in. Have you ever been convicted of a sexual crime? If it's a misdemeanor or a felony, they can ask him if he's been convicted. But they can't ask him, hey, 30 years ago, were you ever in any trouble? Legally, they can't ask him that.
Okay, I think the only distinction anybody was making, Eric, was they were saying that the federal government strongly dissuades you from asking such things, whereas the state of Michigan, you can ask it without being dissuaded. I mean, obviously there's wiggle room there, whatever, but that's the only distinction I heard anybody making. But I do understand your point. I do.
Okay, because it's really weird, and I agree with you. What needs to happen is whoever broke this story, people need to go after him with the same zeal they're going after Matt Patricia, because this is 20 years old. It was done.
Well, I don't know if you could say that, and here's why. If you're a reporter, right, and you look at the climate of the National Football League today, particularly in the aftermath of Ray Rice and all the residue from that, people that have been accused of things that have happened from years ago have been in the news for those things, having to explain themselves because of those things. So if you Google Matt Patricia, for example, and within 20 minutes, something pops up about something in Matt Patricia's past dating back 22 years ago. And then the operative question is, did the Detroit Lions know anything about this and still elected to hire him? I don't know how you can fault the reporter for that.
In this way, because I liken it akin to the tweets that they brought out about, was it Josh Rosen, the quarterback, when he was younger as a teenager?
Josh Allen for Buffalo Bills.
It's kind of the same thing. Matt Patricia, that was 20 years ago. So we're automatically assuming, we're running the story that he was a slug and he doesn't have the potential for changing, but it's okay that we cut the teenager some slack?
Well, let me say this. I get where you're coming from, and from a principled perspective, I definitely have a problem with it. Please don't get me wrong, Eric. I hear you. But are you comparing a young adult to a teenager?
What I'm comparing is the zeal that they're going after them all.
But how? What's the zeal?
The teenager, we forgave him because he was a teenager.
Okay.
Understandably, we all make mistakes.
Whoa, stop right there. Stop. Hold it. Stop, Eric. The teenager took a phrase used on the show Family Matters, not to mention from the lyrics of Rick Ross and a couple of his hip hop songs, and tweeted about it. That is entirely different than sexual assault, man. Wouldn't you say? Hold on, Eric. I need to understand that you do get the distinction. I mean, listen, this allegedly involved sexual intercourse that was not voluntary. That is entirely different than a tweet. Do you understand that?
I understand that. I got that.
Okay, go ahead.
But I'm going on the principle thing of the zeal at which everybody decides to go after somebody instead of stopping, doing some research, doing some real investigative work, finding out what really happened, finding out that it got dismissed or it never happened.
Eric, with all due respect, I think you're being a bit disingenuous because you're being emotional about the fact that this is even a story. And I can respect it. I'm not disrespecting you for that, Eric. Please don't get me wrong. But come on, bro. I mean, you can't listen when you talk about real investigative work. Okay, what's the investigation? He was indicted. Okay, the alleged victim would not show up to testify. The case was dropped. It became publicized. The district attorney clearly made his position known that he felt Matt Patricia was guilty, which prompted Matt Patricia to come out and say, false, I'm innocent. Tell me what else could have been done outside of being a fly on the wall and actually witnessing it. What else could possibly be done?
Doing all of that work before breaking the story.
Hold on, wait a minute. That's part of the story. Wait a minute. That's part of the story. I promise you, without knowing the reporter or anything about the reporter, I promise you, Matt Patricia and the Detroit Lions knew this story was coming out before it came out. 101 in journalism is that the story's about to come out. You call the coach and or the team for comment. So you can't sit up there and accuse him of not doing his due diligence just because they took an approach and decided to publicize a story that you don't like or that you yourself personally would not have publicized, which is why you're not a journalist and that person is. The fact of the matter is that doesn't mean their due diligence wasn't done. It's very likely that the due diligence was done. They just made a journalistic decision that this was indeed a news story, so we're going to publicize it.
Okay, but the thing is, the due diligence was done, and why are we having so much miscommunication about what can be said federally and what can be said statewide?
Because let me tell you something right now, because again, you are the one that's saying there's a whole bunch of miscommunication. What folks have said, to my knowledge, is that the federal government strongly dissuades it, but doesn't prohibit it. As a result, Michigan law enables you to have the right to ask the question. That's all I'm saying. So nobody else has said anything else that you're attaching to it. At the end of the day, and bottom line, Eric, it's your right to feel this way. Please don't get me wrong. I'm going back and forth with you, but I'm not saying that you are wrong for the way that you feel. But the way that you feel is entirely different than somebody having the right to do it and defining whether or not it's a story. I don't like it. I don't like the thought of a man having to deal with something that has been past him for the last 22 years. But if you're talking about sexual assault that involved sexual intercourse, okay? Excuse me, that's a very, very serious allegation for a man that has been tagged to be a leader of men in today's society where domestic violence, sexual assault, and all of that stuff has been raking through the NFL like a damn virus, it seems. I don't think you can sit up there and say it's not a story. I think you're going too far with that, Eric.
No, I'm not. The only problem I have is when people are saying that Michigan state law says that they can ask Matt Patricia anything.
Eric, you just lied. That's not your only problem with this. You just stated it numerous times. That is not your only problem with this. You have a problem with the fact that this is a story, period. You just said that. So you can't say, oh, my only problem is people are trying to find what Michigan law is and they know what they're talking about. No, sir. Your problem is that this is a story, and that's okay, Eric. But you got to be honest. That's your problem with the story. That it is a story. Don't say to us, it's just Michigan law. No, you hate the fact that this is a story because it happened 22 years ago. You think it's incredibly unfair to somebody in Matt Patricia's position. And I'm telling you, that's okay to have that opinion. But don't act like you don't have a problem with that when you have stated already that is your problem with it.
Questions are being misrepresented about what you can ask in Michigan is keeping the story alive.
Okay, no problem. Have a nice day, Eric. You're not being honest. You made that point. I told you people weren't saying that. You keep regurgitating it instead of getting to my bigger point, which you've already admitted you have a problem with this being a story. Stop lying. We don't do that on this show. It ain't happening. Back with your calls to close out the show in a minute. It's Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Let's get back to the phone before we get on out of here to enjoy this weekend's festivities, particularly the Cavaliers visiting the Boston Celtics at TD Bank Garden. Let's go to my man Mike in Denver real quick. You're live at Stephen A. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, man, just real quick before you get out of here. We've been waiting for this Golden State Houston. It's here now. And, man, I think it's going to be over in 5, Stephen A. I don't think Houston got enough, man.
I'm going to give it 6 games, Mike. I'm going to give it 6. But let's talk Monday. I'm going to give it 6, though. I'm going to give it 6. Appreciate the call. Donnie in Long Island, you're live at Stephen A. Real quick, Donnie, go ahead.
Stephen A., I appreciate you taking my call. I wish your show was like 3 hours longer, man.
Don't add no more work to my schedule. You're trying to kill me? Come on.
I enjoy the NBA commentating because you don't really find that too much on these talk radio shows, and I appreciate it. I want to make a few points. Number one, Casey should have been fired because he lost to LeBron 1 out of 7 this year, I believe. He lost last year in the playoffs. What did he do differently to change his plan against the best player in the world?
What could he have done?
Well, the same thing that Brad Stevens is going to do when we get to the Celtics. He is going to put different bodies on Smart. He's going to put even Rozier. He's going to put all kinds of bodies. He's going to make him uncomfortable because you know what? LeBron James, 6'8", 260 is soft. He gets clotheslined. He gets fouled. He looks at you. He shrugs. He doesn't even look at you after he gets fouled. So that is how you got to make the best player in the world uncomfortable. Casey did not do that. That is why he's not there anymore. I don't blame Toronto for firing him. I don't because you know why? Right. Stephen A., what if I gave you a Ferrari for 8 months and I took the engine out of it in the summertime?
I got you. Good point, Donnie. I like the argument. I like it. Appreciate the call. Hayden in Cali, you're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Hayden, real quick.
Oh, boy. Stephen A., I just wanted to say thank you. I've been watching you, long-time viewer from the days of you, Skip, and Molly. And I can't believe ESPN had the audacity to put Skip on the trading block or let him go in free agency.
No
But
comment.
at the same time, my question is, LeBron, we've been sitting here just debating. God bless that man. He's made the NBA better. Me and my partner here, we think he's going to the 76ers.
Yeah, he's going to
the 76ers.
I tell you this much. I don't think you guys are wrong right now. Right now, I'd label them the front runner. I hear Houston. I hear L.A. Always there's a slight possibility that he could end up staying in Cleveland, although I sincerely doubt that. But you and your partner ain't wrong. I think it's a viable option. I think Philadelphia right now is the number one option for LeBron James. Having said all of that, He's got a championship to try and win. Boston's next. He's taking them out in 6. Golden State's beating H-Town. Houston in 6. I'll holler at y'all Monday. Until then, peace and love.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.